the Met Police Chief, Sir Mark Rowley, has hit back at critics of live facial recognition at Notting Hill Carnival, slamming claims of mass surveillance. Rowley insists that the tech will target dangerous offenders, not communities, to ensure the safety of over 1 million attendees. And let's get a word from this on former Bedfordshire Police and Crime Commissioner Festus Akinbusoye. Festus, welcome to the show. Did I get your name right?
You were absolutely perfect. Let's leave it like that, shall we?
Thank you very much indeed. You do know how difficult it is sometimes pronouncing things when you've got an Ulster accent and you think of things with an Ulster brain and Ulster pronunciations.
I can understand what you're saying perfectly, so you're fine.
But welcome to the show. The Met defending use of live facial recognition software at Notting Hill Carnival. Is it not just mass surveillance?
No, it's not. Look, we already have one of the highest proportion of CCTV cameras per probably even square mile in the world, okay? And people often talk about the fact that, we've got all this digital evidence, but the police don't come to recover this, they can't go through them. And the police will say to you, well, we can't go through them because they're just hours and hours and hours of video footage, and we're looking for one person. Well, guess what? We now have a piece of technology that has moved on miles over the last decade when it first started. And it can allow the police to be able to identify certain things without the use of a human being having to constantly go through hundreds of people. Why should that be a problem? The priority of the police, without fail and without question, must be public safety. And so I support the use of these cameras. If anything, if it stops troublemakers or those who are wanted for sexual offences from coming to the carnival, so be it. It will make it a lot more fun for everybody else.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. The facial recognition software will alert to certain faces, and they say this could be such and such. But there always has to be a human in the link, a human in the loop, to make the decision as to whether that face that's been flashed up is actually a suspect, and then someone has to make a decision as to whether to go and question them, arrest them, or do something else. So this isn't a computer saying there's someone guilty and automatically sending something from a computer out to arrest them and charge them.
The weird thing about this is that you would have thought, with the way some of the people are going on about this, is that this camera actually goes out and arrests people by itself. It's still a human being that has to intervene and make an informed decision. This is just an aid, okay? And look, the Met have already been able to make over 500 arrests, okay, using this live facial recognition cameras. Other police forces in the country have been able to do the same. You've got prolific sex offenders who have been arrested. You've had people who have been wanted by the courts who have been arrested by this. If you have a high street of thousands of people, say Oxford Street, for example, all right, 2 or 3, even 10 police officers on the Oxford Street will not be able to detect me if I was a wanted person, if I had a balaclava, if I had my face covered. These cameras can actually detect me from a crowd more than a police officer would be able to do. Why should this be a problem? This is just a way of enabling the police to do their job in keeping us safe, which is something that everybody, including Londoners, will definitely want.
But two criticisms that really come out a lot of the time is that they tend to flag up people from racial minority backgrounds more often than they'll flag up people from a non-minority background. And there's also complaints that whenever these are used around sites of religious sites, especially religious sites that represent minority backgrounds, mosques, etc., that it's impinging on their privacy rights. What have you got to say on that?
Well, it is true that historically these live facial recognition cameras were very poor at deciphering between people of darker skins, okay? However, the technology has moved on so far in the last 3-4 years to the point where that error rate is negligible. So what they're talking about there is the false positive rate, okay? Some of these now have a false positive rate of about 1%.
And then you've got a human being that makes a decision.
And the reality is this: there is no police tactic that is 100% accurate. In the same way that there is no medical procedure that is 100% foolproof. There is a risk involved in any kind of technology involved intervention. The issue is, do the benefits outweigh the downsides? Now, my only caveat to this, Philip, is that whenever the police are using this technique, this tactic, they have to make it public. They have to let the public know why they're doing what they're doing, and they should make the data available to the public. So even if you make a mistake, let us know where you're getting wrong and what you're doing to fix it in the future, rather than just telling us about the positive side of it, because there will be mistakes made, and that will give an opportunity to learn for the future. But without question, we need to have this in place. We need the police to have all the tools that they need to do their job, and public safety must be the priority. End of story.
Now, I'm going to declare an interest here because I've written quite a lot about facial recognition software and capabilities. So I know quite a bit about the technology and everything else. And from my perspective, all it does is it provides an electronic equivalent of putting hundreds more police officers out around crowds,
Exactly.
but in a way where you haven't got hundreds of police officers in uniform potentially disturbing others. You're having a good time and trying to have a good time. You're doing it quietly and covertly to allow the smaller number of police officers there, and therefore the London government is not paying the Metropolitan Police more money for the staff that's out there, and they can use the other police officers in different areas. Am I in the right ballpark?
You are. And I used to be a special constable, so a volunteer police officer. And that's why I became a police and crime commissioner. And I can tell you now that, look, you go around doing foot patrols, and yes, police officers do foot patrols, and I did that myself. And what I will tell you is this: when you start your shift, you're given a parade of faces. Let's say about 20, all right? You now have a 12-hour shift. How many of those faces will you be able to recognize by even the second hour, let alone the 10th hour of your shift? Because you've got so many other things that you have to go and deal with. Now, assuming one of those sexual predators on young children walk past you on a high street, they could even say hello to you. You would not recognize them. But that's because I'm a human being, as are all other police officers. But all this camera does is to give the police an extra piece of kit to be able to better do their job. And then they make an informed decision, compile the evidence, and then the CPS, the Crown Prosecution Service, makes a charge decision. That is it. Why anyone would have an issue with this, I honestly don't know.
I think part of the issue comes in as to people thinking that their data is automatically going to be stored in some form of police database and then used for other things. Can you give assurances? You've been Police and Crime Commissioner. You'll have had a look at this and how the data has been handled, and make sure that there's no political ramifications of what's happening. Can you give people the assurance that this data isn't being stored and used in a way that could target them in some other way in the future?
From what I know about this system does not have a database of every person's face in the country. There is no database that can hold that much information.
Yeah.
What it will have, however, is the faces of individuals who are being sought for by the authorities, which is not the entire population of everyone going to Notting Hill Carnival. The likelihood of your face and my face being on there is almost zero, unless either of us are wanted by the police. Okay? What it does is that it will match the faces that go past it with the faces on the database, which are the faces of those who are wanted. All right? Now, if your face does not match what is already on the database, within a twinkling of an eye, it is deleted. It does not store people's faces. What it does is that it matches faces that it sees with those that's already on the database, and if it doesn't match, it's deleted.
Now, the technology, I understand, again, if the Metropolitan Police pioneered a new technique of looking for people called super recognizers. For those that don't know who super recognizers are, they're individuals who, for some reason or other, have got the ability to identify people from seeing a very, very small proportion of their body, their face. It could be an eye, it could be an ear, it could be a nose, it could be the way they walk. Do you think, will this technology, if you combine it with super recognizers, allow the police to see through effectively people wearing balaclavas or trying to disguise their identity in a way, and therefore help catch those criminals who are trying to work through the crowds but disguise themselves?
even these so-called super recognizers, Philip, are not as good as what these LFRs, live facial recognition cameras, can do. We now have technology that can actually spot that person like me in a dark room.
No.
That is how good these are now.
And wearing a balaclava?
Yes, because they will use based on the distance between your eyes.
Well, that's fantastic. Now, while I've got you on, we've had the crime survey for England and Wales that's just come out recently. It shows that only 49% of people rated local police as good or excellent in 2025. Commenting on police visibility having dropped significantly, with only 11% of people seeing foot patrols weekly, never mind daily, down from 29% a decade ago. Victim satisfaction with police responses fell to 51% in 2025 compared to 70% in 2015 and 75% in 2014. Do you think that we're seeing a decline in policing?
I think what we're seeing is a massive increase in demand relative to the level of policing. The population of this country has grown massively since, say, even 2010. We all know this. The level of funding has not kept pace. Unfortunately, we had the austerity years where there were cuts to police numbers. I'm glad that this started to increase between 2015 right up to last year. But unfortunately, what your listeners need to know is that this number is now going down again since Labour came into government last year. The funding situation is a problem. And what is even more tragic, that is hardly spoken about, and I think it will come to the fore in the next 12 months, is the level of police officers who are leaving the job.
Yep.
This is a disaster that is waiting to happen. So at the time we've got demand going up, retention is flatlining or even, recruitment is flatlining or dropping, but retention is just falling through the floor right now. So even officers don't want to be police officers anymore because they can't really do what they sign up to do. And I think one of the ways that we're going to fix this is to have politicians, either mayors or police and crime commissioners and home secretaries, who are going to be full square behind the police, improve the morale of police officers, and let them get on with doing their job. That is very, very important because the level of attrition in policing is really, really bad at the moment, and we have to find a way to reverse this quickly.
Well, Festus, on that point, I couldn't agree with you more. It's been a real pleasure talking to you and getting your understanding of facial recognition software.